I'm Teresa Caraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My title today is The Feminization PsyOp. For 5,000 years, we've been told that men are superior to women in everything except looking pretty and raising kids. Now it turns out that actually men are the more beautiful gender, and they're better and care more about the kids. But women really are their equals in terms of being abusive. So let's look at this and see whether you think that this is a psyop to keep us divided so that we don't figure out that they are taking away all of our property, that they are creating a culture in which we do not exist, except as their servants. And let's figure out who the real psychopaths are. I want to start out by pointing out that this is not personal to me. I raised my kids with a dad, and I am the owner of my home because I bought it before I met my husband and managed to keep it in the divorce. This isn't something that I am looking at as a personal vendetta. It is because I'm looking at the data. And what I notice is that whenever I used to talk about economics, people would say, "So, how did you get interested in this?" As if being a woman and being interested in economics must require some personal tragedy. When I talk about religion, I had someone say the other night, "So what got you interested in this?" They were losing the argument, by the way, and that made me answer, I don't know why we aren't all talking about what is the true nature of reality. These are questions that when men talk about them, no one says, "So, why are you interested in politics, economics, theology?" They just assume that men think about ideas and talk about ideas, usually behind closed doors, if we're going back a few eras, in which the servant would come in with the port and the cigars and leave the women out. When people have servants, and I include women in that, they're not going to come to the same kind of conclusions when they talk about philosophy. They're going to be like Aristotle, someone whose name has Aryan in it, I might point out, that air that I've been looking at. They are going to conclude that a master-slave relationship is the way that nature intended things. So if we want to get out of that, we who are doing the real work, and by that I mean both genders, need to be thinking about ideas and taking time to think and talk about these things that are really important, because they're not just abstract concepts. On my last video, one of my favorite commenters, Julia Schoolafish, replied, "I'll see you on those two, and I'll raise you to misogynistic Arthur Kwon Lee videos." And so I will link those in the Substack. One of them is, if men can't get laid, they're not going to fight for the empire. I did not expect such a rousing confirmation of my theory that men give obedience to the empire in order to get laid, in order to rape women and have sex slaves. And that was the origin of hierarchy. And so I'm trying to figure out what the downside is of that. If men stop fighting for the empire and stop working for the empire, he seems to think that this is a problem for the empire. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to solve that. He gives men advice on where to move so that they can find docile women, but he thinks that there should be something that is going to make women want to be more subjugated. Don't know what that is. His other video is that men are the more beautiful gender, and he goes through a bunch of nature videos showing how men in all species have the exotic plumage and that they are the highly marked and distinctive and really beautiful species. Now, women and I have been talking about this for a long time. We think we have been gypped. In every other species, men are the ones, by which I mean the male of the birds in particular, who have the exotic fan dances with their plumage, who do the aerobatics with their flight patterns, who clear an entire amphitheater so that they can put on a show. They're the ones who build elaborate structures trying to attract the female. And the females, as Arthur correctly points out, are not very vividly colored because they don't need to be. Because the men are trying to get laid, and the women who want sex don't have to try. They only have to choose. So Arthur is completely missing the point of this because he thinks that women should be chasing after men. If he thinks that men are the more beautiful gender in humans, why isn't he gay? Because if he's talking about gay men, he's right. When I see the gay men, they are working it. And not only are they more beautiful, but they also smell better. My gay buddy in aerial class, when I ask him, what is that scent? He says, expensive. And I am certain that he's right. And then Unbecoming, or whoever the person or organization is behind those excellent book summaries, posted The Great Feminization, in which he talks about my old friend Janice Fiamengo. And I will link the episode that I did on Janice after the YouTube and in the Substack. What Janice says is, I was born to love a man, and apparently to wash his dishes and pick up after him in exchange for him taking care of her and paying all the bills. This is what she sees as her life's purpose. I personally think any grown man who needs a woman to take care of him is pathetic. But she says that she just can't help herself. When she sees these men being picked on, she has to come to their defense. And so she's made this entire platform out of attacking feminists. Now, men just love that. This is like a cat fight on the playground when women stick up for them and scratch out each other's eyes. That really turns them on. So Janice Fiamengo has created this anti-feminism culture because men can't get away with saying that, but a woman certainly can. What she's talking about, it's real. I've talked about it too in my episode, Woke Feminism. It is a version that has been perverted, that has been corrupted and turned into something that is extremely petty, rather than standing up for mothers, which she is not. So I think that this is something that is going on, and it is going on as a, here's the problem, here's the alternative, now let's let them clash. Another example I saw was an UNS review, and this was an article that talked about how King Charles taking away the prince's title was because he had been feminized, because women booed him when the prince was found to have had Epstein connections, and they criticized him, and he just couldn't take it because he's too much of a wimp, because he's become a woman. So now you're going to have pedophiles who are getting off without an investigation, which is why he got stripped of that title, and you're going to blame it on the women, because when men supposedly are feeling empathy, but not really, it must be the woman's fault and not the ones who are jerking their puppet strings behind the scenes. Another commenter asked what I thought about the new empathetic women judges who were turning sociopaths who had committed violent crimes back onto the streets because they felt sorry for them. Those are not women. Don't be fooled so easily. Those are puppets with boobs. This is an agenda. It is exactly the same as making it women judges who are giving custody to abusive dads. And please stop bringing up Hilary Clinton. Hilary Clinton's not a woman. She is a patriarch without a penis. They need to have a female face on the exact agenda that has been put forward for ages. This is the only way they can get away with it. And you keep falling for it. And I'm not meaning you, I'm just meaning certain people who keep on coming back and saying, oh yeah, but look at women. They do these things too. They're even worse than men. So let's look at some of those studies that keep being cited that women are more abusive to kids than men are. Now, I'm going to compare this as someone who was paying attention to the data during the COVID con to those the unvaxxed are dying at 3 times the rate of the vaxxed. When we dug into that, you realize that they were counting as unvaxxed people who had been vaccinated within the first 2 or 3 weeks, the time that they were most vulnerable to having terrible repercussions that included death. In the same way, let's dig into this data. What that statistic rests on, when you look at it, is that women are 90% of the caregivers when there is only one caregiver present. And then, when there are 2 caregivers present, a man and a woman, father and mother, and something terrible happens, the woman is charged with failure to protect. And so even if she has been an object of abuse, she still gets charged equally with the man, and that counts as abuse. Also, what counts as abuse is negligence. Even if nothing bad actually happens to the child, that is equal to something that is done intentionally to the child. So when you take into account that 90% of the time it's a woman who is the caregiver, and that you look at the severity of the impact, what the data shows is that men are overwhelmingly the abusers to children. And the last thing I'll comment on is all the men who are saying, yes, and look at the millions of babies who are being killed by abortion. So what they're saying is that millions of mothers are baby killers because they just don't care about those babies. They just don't have any interest in babies. They even kill full-term babies. That's what they want us to believe. Can I please have some mothers weigh in here on the comments that mothers are not killing full-term babies? This is so ridiculous that I feel like I'm trying to explain that red and green really are different to people who are colorblind, that not understanding how mothers feel about their children. And if there are exceptions, which of course there are exceptions in terms of behavior, we need to look at what is the history of this. For 5,000 years, men have had the power of violence, of money, and of property. And what women have had is the power of sex and psychological manipulation. So that is what has been created by this dichotomy. If we look now at mothers as killers who need to be forced to have those babies and hand them over to the men who are the ones who really care about the children. I don't know who we're kidding here. That if women don't feel like they are in a safe enough position to have a child, something has gone terribly wrong with our society. And instead of forcing women to have those children, I think we need to fix that. Because by the time that a mother has a child, she has formed that baby entirely out of her own body, with the exception of one cell. That child is hers. And there is a love that mothers feel for their children that if they did not, we wouldn't exist. It isn't as if the selfish thing to do is to feed your kids at your own expense. And yet, that is what females of every species have done in order for us to be here. So I think we need to forget this nonsense that women and men are exactly the same in terms of how they feel about the child, because a woman is built by nature to love that baby. There is no other way we could have survived. And a man makes a choice to love that baby. And I am so appreciative that they do. But it is a choice. And for more, here is the one on the myth of the terrible mother and Michael Tsarian and Janice Fiamengo. And this one is a fun one on disagreeable women. Thank you for watching.